So here it is, the GH5S, and we will step into those images that I did with the Boxer later on into that video. So now that it has been announced officially, you know already what that camera will bring to us video enthusiasts and Panasonic Lumix users. Low light performances for sure. And I have been testing that camera for quite a while now, as I have been commissioned to shoot some stills images with it. In early November. Of course, back in early November, that same camera that I have here is a pre-production camera with a firmware 0.2. And if you are GH5 users, you know that Panasonic take the firmware really seriously. The 2.0 firmware on the GH5 was almost like an entire new video camera. So now on this one, I still have the pre-production firmware. And I have been amazed by the low light capabilities already. It is brighter than my own human eyes actually. Now with the GH5, the GH5S, the EVA 1, the VariCam LT, and then the super professional VariCam system, Panasonic delivers here an entire and amazing camera lineup. It is just you now to decide which one you'll be using as a main cam and which one has B cam, I guess. So how Panasonic technically did actually make that GH5S a low light beast. Without stepping too much into technical stuff, it has to do with the pixel size. The sensor size itself is still a micro four thirds, and bigger pixels means less pixels in terms of resolution. If they are bigger on the exact same sensor size, it is pretty logical. This is the reason why we are on the GH5S with a 10.2 megapixel sensor, where the GH5 is 20.3. But not really flexible on very low light situation obviously. The pixel size from the GH5 to the GH5S increased by 1.96. Almost 2 times bigger than. And beside the pixel size, the GH5S also combined the dual native ISO. This is the kind of technology that you will find in much more higher priced cameras. Basically, into our GH5 there is a single native ISO, which means that the pixel get the light from the scene, the signal then passes through the single analog circuit, then the gain is amplified depending on the ISO requested, and the noise curve go up together when increasing the ISO. With this dual native technology, the pixel get the exposure from the scene. Then we have 2 analog circuits. One is the low light ISO circuit. The other one is the low noise circuit. And this prior the gain amplifier step. So now let's step into the GH5S and you go to the exposure menu. The very first tab is the dual native ISO setting. There you'll be able to select auto, low or high. If you also select the extended ISO into the menu, exactly like you also would into the GH5, this time on the native low mode, you'll be able to choose from 80 to 800 ISO. For low light situation, you'll step into the native high ISO mode. And you will be able to start from 800 up to 51,200 ISO, if extended ISO is not selected. If extended ISO is on, you will be able to go all the way up to 204,800. So if we give a closer look between the GH5S and the GH5, we are here with a 10.2 megapixel sensor, where the GH5 got 20.3. Then the huge difference, as we have seen, is the low light capabilities. And this time, trust me, on the GH5, it is a complete different story. I am passing over the photographic differences between those two, as we know that the GH5S is definitely video oriented. So in terms of difference between those two, we no longer have the fantastic 5-axis stabilization. I personally was extremely used to that amazing 5-axis stabilization on the GH5, as I love to be floating there with that tiny camera around my models. This time no stabilization on the sensor on the GH5S, beside of course the video stabilization mode. But that crops into your image a bit, so I never use that one. And this is a professional oriented camera. And I see all around me, all my friends and dear colleagues video shooters, they all are using gimbals and stuff. So that will not change much for them anyway. The next difference is that now we have 50 and 60p on the Cinema 4K mode. And you will also see that the rec quality menu also changed a bit. On my GH5S set to 50 Hz into the system frequency, the rec quality menu is now 3 pages long, instead of 2 on the GH5. They have had all the Cinema 4K flavors on top of the 4Ks. As you see, we have now the Cinema 4K at 50p, at 420 8-bit, and 60p if your system frequency is set to NTSC, of course. On the GH5, the variable frame rate was up to 180 frames per second. On the GH5S, it is now going up to 240 FPS Full HD. This is for shooting some solid slow motion for sure. And the other big difference that shows the perfect cinematographic DNA of the GH5S is that the Vlog is pre-installed into the camera. And this is so great. Honestly, trying the Vlog on the GH5 or the GH5S, you're never gonna shoot without after. I did a previous tutorial about it on my YouTube channel, and if you are not used to what the flat profile is or what the Vlog is and how to expose it, go see that previous video. It is really great that this time there's no need to buy it online. It is pre-installed. So now let me tell you a little bit about those images that we've seen with the Boxer. This is a test I did in super low light. Actually, if you are following me on my channel, I did post recently a GH5 test in this exactly same location with the Boxer, but that time I had used also those light on ceiling on the top of the ring, and there was also that same window on the ceiling on the corner of the boxing ring, but in that case it was a bright sunny day, so I had some light reflecting on the wall, and the main space right beside the ring, the boxing ring, was also giving me a much more level in terms of exposure. So this time I turned off everything, and so there was no light on the top of the boxing ring, and I did only use the small window on the top of the ceiling on the corner of the boxing ring, and I did also use a Dedoflex that I will show you in a minute. So my camera setup is this one. So just one part missing is that obviously the Ninja Inferno that I was using. I did shot Apple ProRes, of course, 422 HQ, and I was carrying it, you know, like this is pretty light actually, and I did use the Ninja Inferno without the battery, so I was plugged into the wall, and so it was way lighter than using the batteries into the Ninja Inferno. And I was using this plate, and this plate wasn't to use it with the stand, but just when I had to talk with the Boxer or to do anything in terms of changing the setup and stuff like that, I was just putting it into the stand just to make it easier for me. Otherwise it was not really well balanced. Like this it's okay, but sometimes, you know, like with the screen over there, because the screen was a little bit forward for me not to go completely back with my head all the time. And so that was the setup, and this is actually the main setup that I'm using no matter if I'm working with the GH5 or the GH5S. I really like it, and I really want it handy like this. So my main lens is always, or like most of the time, the 42.5. The Nocticron is an amazing lens, super bright. It goes up to 1.2 in terms of aperture, and this time I did close a little bit. I did shot everything at 2, f2, and some shot that you've seen into the video have been shot also using the 25mm, which is then giving me a sort of a 50mm lens, and so those were the main lenses that I did use. So this is my camera setup. In terms of lighting, as you've seen when I did measure the light with my assistant, just to give you an idea of how low the light was on the setup, it was actually completely dark. We had all the fly case on the floor, and when we needed to go there to get some equipment or get some accessories or just to change lenses, it was really complicated because it was completely dark, completely black on the floor. So the only setup I did was actually counterbalancing the light coming from the window on the ceiling on the corner of the boxing ring, and I did use those kind of softbox from Dedolight. This is the main light I'm using all the time. So this is the light that I did use yesterday, okay, with the softbox. It's pretty easy, pretty convenient, because you can of course focus the light, okay, by turning this wheel. You can focus or defocus the light, the beam, and it comes with this ballast. So it's a bicolor, so I can move all the way to like daylight to tungsten really easily, and everything in between. And of course, you also have the power that you can also reduce or increase. And for that shooting, because I wanted to counterbalance the really small amount of light coming from the window, I did pull this completely down. There was no way to go lower than this. Even if I'm shooting, sometimes I'm shooting the softbox just to show you, it looks pretty bright, but it wasn't. It was really dark. I'm going to show you some on and off images on my girlfriend or on the Boxer sometimes when I was testing on and off, and the idea was just to counterbalance the window light. That's it, no more than that. And in terms of metering, I did use my flash meter just to check and just to show you also how dark the scene was. And into measuring the ambient light, I was at 100 ISO. It gave me, in terms of aperture, 2.0, okay, 2.0 and 1/10 of stop. And the shutter speed was at 1 second, which means that it's completely darkness, because at 2.0 it's pretty wide open already, and I needed to shoot. If I wanted to shoot a still image, I had to shoot at 1 second, which means that it's pretty dark scene. So once again, in terms of a general overview of what you've seen, of course I was shooting on a vlog with my GH5S. I did use this light, this dado light, with the softbox over here, just to counterbalance the light coming from the window on the corner of the boxing ring. And I did put temperature on this one at 5600. My main lens, as I said, was the 42.5, and sometimes I did also use the 25. In terms of ISO, I was at 3200 or 6400. That's it. The idea was to test it a little bit, so I was in between those, and that obviously gives me an amazing clean image. Based on what I do, most of the time I bring light into my setups, okay, because light is a kind of signature in my work, so I always try to control my light. So I don't consider myself in need of super high ISO, because I'm not doing like documentaries, or I don't do any concert and stuff like that, or theatrical stuff. So I don't really need to go really high. But in some cases, like those kind of cases, like I'm shooting a boxer into the place where he's training, I can't always totally control the setup. So I always have 2 or 3 of those. Most of the time I also have the D4, which are exactly the same but slightly smaller than this. This is actually what I'm using right now to record this video. But most of the time, so I try to control my setup in terms of light, and the maximum that I will go anyway will be 6400 most of the time, because as I said, I'm controlling my light, and this is really important into my own work. But I was pretty amazed to see the image quality even at 6400. I did not include into this kind of review about the variable frame rate, even if it's really exciting to know that we can now go up to 240 FPS in full HD mode. But I would like to test it and make a tutorial about that, because a little bit like the vlog, you have to understand that you need to proper expose your vlog, otherwise you will get noise or stuff like that, especially with the GH5, of course, not the GH5S anymore, but with the GH5 you may get some noise into the shadows or into the black, because you have to understand that you need to slightly overexpose your vlog. And it's a little bit the kind of same trick with the VFR. Slow motion, it's really exciting with this camera, but you need to understand that you need a proper exposure, because you have a certain bitrate, and the bitrate will be divided by the number of frames, no matter what. So I will come in the near future with a tutorial about the VFR, and we will see how to expose it correctly and how to get the best out of it. Thank you very much, and see you next time.